Since announcing the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Marvel Studios has delivered a series of movies that have been both familiar, playing on beloved Marvel characters, and new for over a decade now. Whether it's pulling from the lore of the comic books or creating its own mythology, the MCU has managed to create must-see moments that have left even hardcore fans anxious about spoilers in each new release. Let's take a look at some of the most unexpected moments in the MCU. It's hard to imagine that all the way back in 2008, the Marvel Cinematic Universe launched itself with Iron Man. No one knew exactly what a shared universe would look like. The closest model was Marvel's other property in the hands of Fox, the X-Men franchise that had started with the team-up and then branched out. The MCU intended to do it the other way around, with individual characters getting solo movies first, but fans weren't sure how these movies would interact. The question was answered for those who stuck around for the credits of Iron Man, when one Nick Fury, the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., showed up in Tony Stark's study to introduce him and us to the Avengers initiative. With that reveal, not only did Marvel change the nature of superhero movies forever, but also movie-going habits. The post-credit scene has become a staple even outside the MCU. As the head of the secretive S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury has fostered an air of mystery and detachment. He's a man of secrets. For Marvel's Phase 1, Fury's right-hand man and stand-in for human warmth was the unflappable Phil Coulson. Coulson worked as the liaison for the loose connection of superpowered beings that eventually become a superhero team. While they would never really trust Nick Fury, they all couldn't help but like the earnest agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. When the gathered future heroes can't even agree on what makes each other special, Loki did what Loki does best: stir chaos. But Loki made a key mistake when he encountered the eminently likable agent by stabbing him with his scepter. Even as he started to die, Coulson knew that it was just the thing that was needed to bring the Avengers together as a team of heroes. In true comic book form, however, Coulson's death, it didn't take. Almost every hero has their marquee villain, that one foe that shares a special kind of hate for the hero that's almost entirely mutual. Red Skull had what turns out to be a pretty common ambition, using the Tesseract to make a bunch of stuff. No one thought of using all that power to just power the world? No? Okay. Weapons and engines it is, I guess. The Red Skull's fate seemed sealed when he tried to barehand the Tesseract, and he seemingly vanished into space. That is, until Thanos showed up on Vormir, looking for the Soul Stone and met its new keeper, a wraith like Red Skull. The big question as the Marvel Cinematic Universe started was what was going to bring the different heroes together as a team? What threat would be so big that they'd need to face it as a team? Just as in the comics, the answer to that question was the god of mischief himself, Loki. But there were as many questions as answers in that. Where did the Chitauri come from? How did Loki get that mind control staff? It turns out that the master of manipulation had a secret benefactor the entire time, in the form of the Mad Titan himself, Thanos. For fans of the comics, it was a huge moment. While some villains are associated with specific heroes, Thanos' enemy was pretty much most of existence. It was a signal to how big the MCU was really going to get, stretching into the cosmos. The Marvel Cinematic Universe's Baron Zemo was notably different than his comic book counterpart. He wasn't a part of a long lineage of barons, or even a baron at all. He also didn't share his comic book counterpart's penchant for swords, sock caps, and crowns, unfortunately. In fact, he barely did so much as throw a punch. Despite all that, it is arguable, outside of the gauntlet-snapping Thanos, Helmut Zemo was able to do more damage to the Avengers than anyone else. While he used the usual tools of deception and manipulation, his most effective weapon was the truth. Throughout Captain America Civil War, Zemo was determined to get an old mission file, one that showed that the man who killed Tony Stark's parents so many years ago was the brainwashed best friend of Captain America, Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier. That revelation accomplished what Zemo had set out to do: destroy the Avengers from within. The Guardians of the Galaxy introduced the world to the cosmic end of the MCU. At the center of that group of misfits was a man from Earth who'd been abducted as a young child by Yondu and his band of Ravagers. That child, Peter Quill, Star-Lord to, well, him mostly, had been devastated by the untimely death of his mother and never knew his father. All he knew was that Yondu thought he was a jerk. In Volume 2, we learned exactly how right Yondu was. Peter's dad turned out to be the celestial Ego, the living planet. Ego had been sowing his wild oats, so to speak, across the universe to create another celestial. The revelation that Ego also killed Quill's mom to remove the temptation to return to Earth was just the deal breaker Peter needed to turn on his dad and his plan to remake the universe. Good call, Pete. Stan Lee was the force behind the formation of Marvel Comics, turning a pulp horror magazine publisher into a comic book powerhouse and helping to create what became known as the Silver Age, where most of the MCU's top heroes were created. Along with Jack Kirby, Stan the Man introduced the world of heroes to the likes of Tony Stark, the Hulk, and Spider-Man. The charming creator of Marvel Comics took an unguarded joy in the world he helped to bring to life, calling his fans true believers. He invited us to share in that joy. He's made cameos in Marvel projects dating all the way back to the TV movie The Trial of the Incredible Hulk. He even made a cameo in the distinguished competition's Teen Titans Go to the movies, saying he just liked doing cameos. Lee's various unassociated appearances in all of these Marvel movies led to a fan theory that he was actually Uatu, the Watcher, who oversaw all the realities of the Marvel Universe. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 gave a confirmation of sorts when Stan was shown briefing the Watchers on his various appearances. We'll miss you, Stan. Excelsior! With the defeat of the Red Skull at the end of World War II, the unfrozen Captain America could be excused for thinking that he had seen the last of the evil secret organization, Hydra. Captain America was prepared to face the threats of the new world he found himself in. One of those turned out to be the very organization he found himself working for in S.H.I.E.L.D. In The Winter Soldier, he found out about Project Insight, a preemptive program meant to identify and eliminate threats before they manifested. Something that didn't sit well with the champion of liberty and freedom. It turns out that Cap's misgivings were well-founded when he discovered that his old enemy, Hydra, was behind Project Insight and S.H.I.E.L.D. the entire time. Hydra's reach turned out to be a game-changer for more than just Steve Rogers, but for much of the MCU, and it even gave the fledgling agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. a new direction. Hail Hydra! While comic book and MCU Thanos each have different motivations, they shared a singular goal, gathering the 6 Infinity Stones and ending half of all life in the universe. Comic book Thanos did it for his love of death, not the idea of death, but the actual personification of death that exists in the Marvel Comics. When the title of the third Avengers movie was announced, fans wondered how much of the Infinity Gauntlet story would make it to the screen. While Thanos' motivations changed, his quest didn't. This meant that the Marvel Universe faced the possibility that Thanos might succeed. With the team scattered after the events of Civil War and Ragnarok, Earth's mightiest heroes weren't united to stop that Mad Titan. While we knew it was a possibility, we weren't ready to see some of our favorite heroes turn to dust. Oh, Spider-Man, we didn't want you to go either, buddy. In the first outing for the Guardians of the Galaxy, the giant Flora Colossus Groot became the heart of the fledgling team of space pirates turned heroes. He solidified that role when he sacrificed himself to save the team and defeat Ronan the Accuser. After a dance-off, that is. Saving a twig from the fallen tree creature, Groot's offspring had grown into a surly teenager more interested in Quill's old handheld video games than saving the galaxy. Even the presence of Thor and a trip to the legendary Nidavellir couldn't catch the sap-bearing teenager's attention. When Thor had to place himself in the path of focused energy of a dying star to help create the Thanos-destroying weapon Stormbreaker, it takes an incredible toll on the Thunderer, leaving him weak and unable to stand while Eitri looks for a handle. In that moment, Teen Groot's heart grows 3 sizes bigger as he sacrifices his own arm to create the handle to Thor's new mega weapon. Teenage Groot wasn't the only one to have a moment with the signature weapons of the God of Thunder. Before Thanos, Nidavellir, and Eitri, Thor had a weapon that was so tied to him it even had an enchantment on it that made sure no one who wasn't worthy of the powers of Thor could touch it. Of course, that enchantment was placed on the hammer Mjolnir by Thor's dad, Odin, at a time when he didn't think Thor himself was worthy. He was kinda right, Thor was a jerk. Thor's fellow Avengers tested that enchantment. With the exception of a wiggle at the hands of Captain America, the hammer still only found Thor worthy. That is, until a combination of Ultron, the AI Jarvis, the Mind Stone, and a little lightning magic by Thor himself formed the being we know as Vision. The team wondered if they could trust the new android, and the answer came in his ability to handle the judgy hammer Mjolnir. So he's worthy then? Yeah, looks like he's worthy. High on every Marvel fan's wish list as the MCU began to take off was to see Marvel's marquee character Spider-Man among the roster of heroes in the shared cinematic universe. In his first outing, young Peter dealt with the signature issue for Spider-Man of trying to balance his life as an awkward teen and a superhero. Those two worlds collided for Peter when he tries to be a normal teen and attend a homecoming dance, only to find out that his date's father is none other than his current enemy, Adrian Toomes, aka the Vulture, aka Michael Keaton, aka Batman. And you thought your ride to the high school dance was awkward. Captain America has a colorful rogues gallery, like literally colorful. We're looking at you, Red Skull. One of the more outlandish villains that Cap has faced is the super scientist in a machine, Arnim Zola. In the comics, Zola resides in a robot body with a camera for a head and his face on a screen in his chest. In the MCU, he was just a regular guy who was the scientist helping the devious Red Skull build weapons out of the Tesseract. after Captain America crashed Red Skull's bomber in the Arctic, freezing himself for future heroics. The fate of Zola was presumed to be what happens to everyone over time. Except super scientists don't go quietly. It's Zola who downloaded himself into a bank of computers that tells Captain America that Hydra is behind Project Insight, hinting at his comic book form of cameras and computer monitors. Secret identities are a big part of superhero life. It's the whole point of their elaborate costumes, allowing the superhero to thwart ruthless villains and then return to their semi-normal lives without turning all of their friends and loved ones into kidnap victims. For much of the run of Iron Man, the belief was that the mysterious Iron Man was Tony Stark's private bodyguard, because there's no way the Playboy Stark would actually be a hero. It seemed like throughout much of the first MCU movie, Iron Man, this was going to be the case for the movies as well. But at the last second, under questioning, Tony decided to spill the beans. Tony can't help but take credit for his creations. This sets up an MCU that largely forgoes secret identities and the problems that go with them. Yeah, those glasses, they don't fool anyone, Clark. One of the signature villains for Iron Man is the Mandarin, with his 10 power rings formed from the crashed ship of a race of space dragons. It seems like a far reach for the MCU by the time Iron Man 3 had come out. Fans were eager to see how the cinematic universe would handle a villain like the Mandarin, played by the legendary Ben Kingsley. Oh, we were all so excited. It turns out that the Mandarin was a fake, a ruse created by Adrian Killian of another Iron Man foe, Advanced Idea Mechanics. In reality, the Mandarin was an out-of-work actor known as Trevor Slattery. Adrian Toomes, the Vulture, was the main villain of Spider-Man Homecoming, but he wasn't alone. After being undercut by Tony Stark's damage control, Toomes and some of his workers set out poaching discarded alien tech and other leftovers from superhero fights and selling them on the black market. He did that with the help of another longtime Spider-Man villain, the Tinkerer. The Tinkerer. One of the weapons the Tinkerer makes is a pair of gloves that deliver a kinetic shock, not unlike a certain yellow-suited Spider-Man villain. When one of his team, Jackson Bryce, becomes the classic Spider-Man villain, the Shocker, Toomes feels like he's drawing too much attention to their illegal operation. To make a point about how serious he is, Toomes grabs one of the Tinkerer's weapons, one he thinks is an anti-gravity gun, but instead, he disintegrates the fledgling Shocker, stunning everyone, including Toomes. As the saying goes, you can't keep a good man down. Apparently, that also applies to the god of mischief as well. Loki has a habit of seeming to die or be defeated only to pop up again to sow chaos. After falling into the abyss on Asgard, he appeared in control of Dr. Selvig as he was introduced to the Tesseract. After the events in the Dark World, it seemed like Loki had finally met his end, being stabbed by Allgrim with the sword that Loki had just stabbed him with. They did call this the Dark World after all. Thor mourns the death of his troubled brother and goes on to tell his father about the sacrifice of the trickster god for the good of Asgard. The only problem with all that is, as it turns out, Odin is Loki in disguise. Are we sure Thanos really took him out? He seems invincible sometimes. The tale of Quicksilver, the MCU, and the rights to characters is a complicated one. In the comics, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are superpowered siblings and members of the Avengers, but they're also mutants and the offspring of one Magneto. An on-again, off-again X-Men foe and sometimes leader. Sometimes Ian McKellen, sometimes Michael Fassbender. Marvel retained the rights to the Avengers characters, but Fox had the rights to all things mutant. That meant that as long as they weren't mutants, the Maximoff twins could appear in the Marvel movies, and as long as they weren't Avengers, they could also appear in X-Men movies. We got two Quicksilvers, one in X-Men Days of Futures Past, and one in Age of Ultron. But we didn't have very long to get to know the Silver Speedster. While saving people from Ultron, Quicksilver ended up getting shot. There has to be a better way to motivate the Avengers than someone dying. Before we go any further, a word of warning. If you haven't gotten a chance to go out and see Captain Marvel, we're about to do some spoiling. Here be spoilers. If you don't want the movie's secrets revealed, hit that pause button and go out and see the movie. We good? Okay? Everyone on board for what's about to happen? All right. Don't say we didn't warn you. Captain Marvel has brought the Kree-Skrull War to the MCU, one of the longest-lasting conflicts in the Marvel Universe. Captain Marvel, being a Kree warrior initially, is a sworn enemy of the Skrulls. In the comics, there are no good guys in the Kree-Skrull conflict. But the big twist for the MCU is that the Skrulls are, in fact, the good guys, refugees from Kree aggression. A major change from their comic book origins. This definitely shocked us, that's for sure. The Skrulls being good guys wasn't the only big change to the mythology of Captain Marvel that was made. There was a ton of speculation over who was playing what character in the movie. It was thought that Jude Law would be playing the Kree soldier Mar-Vell, the original Captain Marvel of the comics, before Carol Danvers takes over the mantle. Annette Bening also had a mystery role in the movie that was largely speculated to be the Supreme Intelligence, the collected AI that rules the Kree Empire. In the comics, the Supreme Intelligence is portrayed as a giant multi-eyed and mouthed blob in a jar. But thought perhaps it'd be like Ego, who manifests himself as Kurt Russell to interact with people. Well, they were half right. Annette Bening was the Supreme Intelligence to Danvers, but was also the legendary Kree Marvell, this time on Earth trying to use the Tesseract to find the Skrull a new homeworld. Those are some of the most unexpected moments in the MCU. What are your favorites? Did we leave any surprising moments out? Let us know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe to CBR and smash that notifications bell for more MCU videos straight to your inbox. As always, thanks for watching.